The Unseen Puppeteer. Have you ever felt that something is fundamentally wrong in your life, but you can't quite explain what it is? An invisible current pulling you away from the shores of your own intentions. As if, no matter how hard you try to improve, to evolve, to change, something pulls you back into the same mistakes, the same destructive patterns, the same exhausting cycles of frustration. Perhaps you know its voice. It is the inner critic that sabotages you at the most important moments, convincing you to give up just when you are on the verge of achieving something significant. Or perhaps you know its heat. That irrational anger that erupts from nowhere, a volcanic explosion in situations that, in the calm light of hindsight, weren't even that serious. It could be the cold envy you deny feeling, but that silently eats away at you when you see someone achieving something that, deep down, you also desperately desire. Or that paralyzing, suffocating fear of failure that makes you hide behind a fortress of excuses and procrastination. What you may not realize is that all of this is not an accident. It is not bad luck. It is not fate. There is a force operating in the shadows of your mind, a hidden architect shaping your personality, your reactions, and even your choices. A force that you have spent your entire life ignoring, but that has never, for a single moment, stopped acting upon you. Carl Jung called this the shadow. It is the hidden part of your psyche, a psychic cellar, where you have buried everything you didn't want to see in yourself. Your repressed desires, your secret weaknesses, your shames, your darkest emotions, everything you once hid to be accepted by the world. But here lies the profound, terrifying problem. What you ignore controls you. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you pretend it doesn't exist. On the contrary, the more you reject it, the more it grows in the underground of your mind, gathering strength, waiting for the right moment to emerge. It surfaces when you explode for no apparent reason, when you unconsciously push away the people you love and then wonder why you are always alone, when you judge others with a vitriolic hatred, not realizing that you are merely projecting onto them what you fear most in yourself, when you sabotage your own success, fail on purpose, and in the end, convince yourself that you were never good enough to truly try. If you do not face your shadow, it will continue to pull the strings of your life from behind the scenes while you, the puppet, believe that everything is a matter of chance. But if you have the courage to look within, if you are willing to confront what you have always avoided, you can transform the shadow from your greatest saboteur into your most powerful source of strength. And that is exactly what you will discover in this video. Get ready, because this journey will not be comfortable. But if you truly wish to break the cycle of self-sabotage and take control of your life, this is the only path. Let's begin. Before we descend, a brief pause. This is a journey into the depths, and it requires courage. This channel is a guide for those who are brave enough to look inward. If that is you, I invite you to subscribe and join us. Your presence here is a commitment to your own awakening. Let us now continue into the darkness. Chapter 1. The Architecture of the Shadow. How is the shadow built? It is not something you are born with. It is something you learn. From the moment you were born, you were taught about what is acceptable and what is not. From a young age, you learned that some emotions should be shown while others needed to be hidden. You may not even remember the specific moments, but the lessons were carved into your psyche. Phrases like "stop crying," "don't be weak," "don't be angry," "be a good person," "don't be so selfish," "you should share." And so, little by little, entire parts of your authentic self were deemed unacceptable and methodically repressed. What happened to your righteous anger when you were treated unfairly? What happened to your profound sadness, your healthy desire to assert yourself and say no What happened to those wild, creative, and ambitious impulses that didn't fit the neat and tidy image of the good person that the world wanted you to be? They did not disappear. They were simply pushed underground, relegated to the depths of your unconscious, forming what Carl Jung called the shadow. It is the hidden, disowned part of your personality, where all the feelings, desires, and impulses you rejected to be accepted by society are stored. The shadow is not an abstract or distant concept. It is a living, breathing part of you, now operating behind the scenes of your mind. Every time you feel an intense, irrational dislike for someone who is overly confident, it may be your own repressed desire for self-expression crying out. When you harshly criticize someone seeking recognition, it may be your own buried desire to be seen, a desire you were taught was vain or arrogant. When you feel a bitter envy of someone's success, it is often a direct signal of your own repressed ambition, an ambition that someone once told you was greedy. And so, without realizing it, you walk through life like an iceberg. The part that others see, your conscious personality, your persona, is just the visible tip. But the largest, most powerful part of who you really are remains hidden below the surface, invisible even to you. But ignoring the shadow does not mean it stops acting. On the contrary, the more you deny it, the more destructively it manifests. In your irrational fears, in your tendency to repeat the same mistakes, in the toxic patterns that repeat like an endless, tragic cycle. Chapter 2. The Case of the Good Man. Let us observe this in action. Consider a man named Arthur. Arthur is a good man. He is a devoted husband, a hard-working employee, a reliable friend. He is known for his calm demeanor, his patience, and his unwillingness to cause conflict. He is the one everyone turns to for help, and he never says no. Arthur's conscious identity, his persona, is that of a selfless, gentle, and supportive person. But Arthur is living a life of quiet desperation. He feels a chronic, low-grade resentment that he cannot explain. He has a recurring dream where he is a powerful wild wolf trapped in a cage, watching a flock of sheep graze peacefully just beyond the bars. In his waking life, he finds himself increasingly irritable with his wife, snapping at her for minor things. He is also stagnating at his job, watching more assertive, ambitious colleagues get the promotions he secretly desires but feels he doesn't deserve. Arthur's shadow contains everything his good man persona has rejected: his ambition, his aggression, his healthy selfishness, and his capacity for righteous anger. As a child, he was taught that good boys don't get angry, and that wanting too much is selfish. So he buried these parts of himself. His ambition and aggression became the caged wolf in his dreams. His shadow now directs his life from the darkness. His repressed ambition manifests as envy and resentment towards his successful colleagues. His repressed anger, having no healthy outlet, leaks out as passive aggression and irritability towards the person closest to him, his wife. He sabotages his own career because his shadow holds the belief that ambition is wrong. Arthur is a prisoner of his own unexamined virtue. He is calling this collection of symptoms fate, believing he is just unlucky or not good enough. But in reality, he is being expertly manipulated by the hidden part of his own mind. Chapter 3. The Destructive Power of a Denied Shadow. The shadow you ignore does not disappear. It accumulates, it strengthens, and it waits. The more you deny it, the more it finds insidious ways to manifest itself. And if you do not take conscious control, these manifestations can become catastrophic. You can spend years pretending that certain emotions and impulses do not exist. But there will come a time when the pressure of what has been repressed becomes too great, and it will come to the surface. And when that happens, you will have no choice but to face the consequences. One of the greatest dangers of ignoring your shadow is that it always finds a way to escape. If you repress your anger, it may erupt as an uncontrolled, volcanic explosion at an inopportune moment, destroying relationships and professional opportunities. If you hide your deepest desires, they may emerge in self-destructive ways, in addiction, compulsion, and excess. If you bury your traumas, they may manifest as crippling anxiety, panic attacks, or even physical symptoms that medicine cannot explain. And do not be fooled. The shadow is not limited to your inner life. It actively shapes your external reality. If you do not acknowledge your deep-seated fear of abandonment, you will unconsciously sabotage healthy relationships and cling desperately to toxic ones. If you deny your own ambition, you will consistently find yourself in professional situations where you are underpaid and undervalued, because your shadow will engineer your failure to prove its belief that you are not worthy of success. But the greatest danger of all is that if you do not integrate your shadow, it may end up taking total control of your life. Have you ever met someone who seems to be consumed by their own resentment? Who always sees others as the source of their problems? Who carries a silent, simmering anger? These people were not born this way. They have simply spent their entire lives repressing their pain until, one day, their shadow grew so strong that it consumed their conscious personality. The result is an endless cycle of bitterness, fear, and self-sabotage. And perhaps the worst of all is depersonalization, the chilling phenomenon of feeling like a stranger within your own body. This happens because by repressing your shadow, you are also repressing fundamental parts of your life force. Chapter 4. The Application, the Alchemical Art of Shadow Integration. Now that you understand the profound danger of ignoring your shadow, the most important question arises: how do you bring it to light? How do you stop being manipulated by these hidden aspects of your psyche and start using them to your advantage? Integrating the shadow does not mean destroying or eliminating it, because that is impossible. What Jung teaches us is that the shadow is not our enemy. On the contrary, it contains essential parts of who we are: our dormant vitality, our raw power, our deepest creativity, forces that can become our greatest allies if we know how to access them. The problem has never been the shadow itself, but our denial of it. Step 1. Conscious recognition through triggers. The first step is to become a detective of your own emotional life. Pay close attention to your emotional triggers. When something or someone provokes an exaggerated, disproportionate reaction in you, that is the shadow knocking at your door. Stop and ask, what does this intense reaction say about me? Instead of blaming the other person, turn your gaze inward. If someone irritates you because they are arrogant, is that person merely expressing a confidence that you have repressed in yourself? Step 2. The practice of radical self-acceptance. The second step is to allow yourself to feel what has been denied. If you have spent your whole life pretending you don't feel anger, it's time to look at that feeling without fear. This doesn't mean going around exploding at people. It means sitting with yourself in a quiet moment and admitting, yes, I feel anger, yes, I feel envy, yes, I am afraid. And that's okay. The shadow only dominates you when you try to pretend it doesn't exist. When you face it, when you name it, it loses the autonomous control it had over you. Step 3. The Uncensored Journal. A powerful tool for this process is reflective writing. Take a notebook and start jotting down your deepest thoughts, completely uncensored. Ask yourself, what aspects of myself do I reject? What behaviors in others do I judge most harshly? What do I fear the most that others might discover about me? Writing about these issues can be uncomfortable, but it is also liberating, because by naming your shadow, you bring it into the light of consciousness, and what is conscious can be integrated. Step 4. The internal dialogue. Another essential method is visualization and internal dialogue. Jung suggested that we should talk to our shadow as if it were a separate entity. It may sound strange, but it is a profoundly effective technique. Close your eyes. Imagine this repressed part of you. Give it a form. What does it look like? What does it want to tell you? Often, when we give a voice to our shadow, we discover that it is not a monster, but a forgotten, wounded part of ourselves that just wants to be heard, to be acknowledged, to be brought home. The synthesis, the courage to be whole. We began with the feeling of being pulled back by an unseen force. We now have a name for that force, the shadow. We understand that it is not an external fate, but an internal, unconscious power directing our lives from the darkness. We have journeyed into the deepest part of the Jungian psyche. We've deconstructed how the shadow is built from our repressed emotions. Through the case of Arthur, we saw how it silently destroys a life. We've explored its dangerous manifestations, and, most importantly, we have been given a practical 4-step toolkit to begin the sacred work of shadow integration, recognizing our triggers, accepting our feelings, journaling without censorship, and engaging in internal dialogue. At this point, you know that the shadow is within you, whether you like it or not. You can continue to deny its existence, pretending that your fears and repressed impulses do not affect you. Or you can make the decision that few people have the courage to make, to look within and regain control of your own psyche. Most people will never do this work. They will continue to repeat the same mistakes and blame the world for their problems. But you can. If you have made it this far, something inside you knows that this change is necessary. This path is not easy. It means giving up the comfortable illusion that you are only your good side. It means confronting past pains and admitting that much of what happens in your life is your own responsibility. This process is uncomfortable, but it is the only real path to liberation. As Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The journey into the self has now begun. If something in this video resonated with you, I want you to make a commitment. Tell me in the comments. What is one part of your shadow you now realize you have been ignoring? Talking about it is the first step toward bringing it into consciousness. And more importantly, do not stop here. This work is a process. The next video will take you even deeper into another essential piece of this puzzle. If you truly want to evolve, you cannot afford to ignore it. So subscribe to the channel and keep watching. Because the more light we shed on the unconscious, the less it controls us.